we had a couple of sports. We had field hockey and softball, and that was about basketball. But I think back then, well, when I got to high school, arrived on the threshold of high school, there were only 5 players on the team, but I think there were 7 players the year before I arrived. So we had to find our own way, so to speak. And then a track club was established, and the longest distance a woman could run at that time was 800 meters, or 880. And then the year after I started high school, they started the mile event for women. And even in the Olympics, the longest event was the 1,500 meters, because the so-called experts in sport thought that if a girl ran over a mile, she'd do bodily harm and never bear children. Well, I'm happy to say that 2 children and 150,000 miles later, and I'm still running. And I'm running because I'm very passionate about running. It's part of my life. It's part of who I am. During my BC days, I used to plan my day around my running. And now in my AD days, I plan my running around my day. Things have changed, but it's still very much a part of my life. And I think it's up to each and every one of you to figure out how you can get your running fix when you need to do so. You know, sometimes I run early in the morning, sometimes I run late at night, sometimes I run during a lunch break. You know, you just learn to fit it in whenever you can. And so for me, it was just trying to challenge myself with longer and longer distances. And my first marathon was actually in Bermuda before the 1979 marathon in Boston. We were down there for a weekend of running, and they had a 10K on Saturday and a marathon on Sunday. And we ran the 10K, and then a handful of us thought we'd run half the marathon as a training run, and we got to the halfway point, and the race officials told us that if we wanted to get to the finish line, we had to wait for the SAG vehicle, you know, the sweep mobile, to go by before they didn't allow any vehicular traffic on the course, and we all decided that we could get there faster if we ran. So we just ran to the finish line, and that was my first marathon. And then I thought, well, I can do this, so I went to Boston a few months later, and again I hadn't looked at the course, and I didn't know what I was getting into, and I didn't even know where the course went. And I remember getting toward the end of the race, and I asked somebody where the so-called Heartbreak Hills were of the Boston Marathon. And they looked at me like I was demented and said, "You've just passed them." Yeah. But I was on a real roll. And if there's any sort of elevation to a course, I know there isn't any down here, but sometimes the crowds can level the playing field.